Camille is now here, so we're going to start. Hey, first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone for being here. We have a couple guests, a guest speaker today, and I'd like to start with a roll call.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Mr. Barham.
Here.
Ms. Cherry.
Here.
Mr. Peterman.
Here.
Mr. Reineberg. Mr. Toops. And Mr. Weaver.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Great. Yeah, I guess Mr. Moore is not here. He's under the weather, so it's one of those things that just happens. First thing on the agenda is the minutes from the January 28th meeting. Hopefully everybody saw those in the read ahead. Is there any questions or comments, or do we want to spend any time going over them?
I'll move that they be adopted as presented.
Second. Okay.
Mr. Barham.
Yes.
Ms. Cherry.
Yes.
Mr. Peterman.
Yes.
And Mr. Weaver.
Yes.
The minutes are approved.
Okay. And the next thing is the financials, and everybody had a read ahead of the financials. Would you like to go over them?
I'll be glad to. This is a very simple statement of net position, or balance sheet, as you might want to call it. Basically, the Portland Industrial Commission has investment in Atlantic Union of $1,056,380.79. It has an asset held for resale at Burtons Point valued at $453,637.66. It's got some small accounts payable due to the city, some bills that the city has paid and haven't settled up yet. So your unrestricted position is pretty much your cash at $1,508,847.05. And turning the page, the activity for January was very minimal. I think there was an indirect cost allocation and investment income. So that was pretty much it. And the rest of the material, gives you detail on Burtons Point and some of the expenses. And I think that sort of summarizes it. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Any questions? And that's informational, correct?
That's correct.
We
So
have to
you're
vote on it.
able to send that to audit if there are no further questions.
Okay. No questions? Okay. Okay, ready for old business. So with Mr. Moore being gone, Brian, you want to take that first item?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. A few updates for you on some old items that we've discussed at our previous meetings. The FY21 Budget Ad Hoc Committee was formed in January. Mr. Peterman and Mr. Reineberg have agreed to serve on that committee. They will be meeting on March 16th at 11 a.m. to review the proposed FY21 operating budget in an effort to move that forward to review and adoption by your April meeting. So that is on track, and we've established a date for that meeting. Are there any questions on that item? The next item before you this morning is an update for the Port Host Communities Revitalization Fund program. If you recall, this is a recently created program that the General Assembly enacted in 2019, essentially allocating $1 million to the 5 Port Host communities throughout the state. We were very excited and were fortunate to receive an announcement of an award that we received on February 4th for the project that we submitted back in September. We did receive the requested amount of $500,000 from the fund to fund the project here in Portsmouth. The other 2 applicants were Newport News and Norfolk. They also received funding, but Portsmouth did get essentially half of the annual allocation for our project, and we will be working with the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development over the next several months to get under agreement for that fund. The project itself is underway, And we being the PPIC, yourselves, as the commission, selected the former Cogentrix power plant at 1 Wild Duck Lane, adjacent to the Port's VIG terminal, for the funding. They have the ability to construct up to 330,000 square feet of warehousing space there on the property. And you may have noticed, if you've driven down the Western Freeway recently, the power plant has been demolished and is cleared from the site. They are currently working to demolish the existing site infrastructure so that it will be in a marketable state. So we're very excited to receive the fund award. I think it's a great example of regionalism, where we've worked closely with the port, the other port host localities, both in Hampton Roads and Richmond and Front Royal, as well as our partners at the state, to create a program really to specifically benefit port host localities and some of the challenges that we face as a result of hosting the port. Because there are some unique aspects in being a host to a port facility. So very excited to have this announced and be moving forward with the project.
Does that grant cover the entire cost of that demolition? Pretty massive, it looked like.
The program requires a 1-to-1 match. The total demolition cost, if I recall, is about $1.3 million. So this will be covering about 38%, I want to say, of that total demolition cost. And they've got some additional costs that are factored in with their acquisition of the property as well. So does not cover the entire cost, but a portion of that.
Brian, is the property that is developed going to be all taxable?
Yes, the property will be taxable. It's privately owned and will be taxable upon completion.
The other part is it being paid by the city, or is it a private investor that is putting up money to take care of this? Or
it is a private property owner. The owner of the property, Industrial Realty Group,
right,
is the funder of the remaining portion of the work.
Okay, so the city doesn't have to pay the half of the $100,000.
It does not. Not in this case. There's an ability if the city were to ever utilize the program for a publicly owned property, there's an opportunity where the city could do that, but in this situation, it's a privately funded project with the exception of the grant money coming through the state. So really a pass-through in all instances is really what we're doing here.
All right, thanks.
Brian, I just want to ask, is the grant going to flow through PPIC, or will it go directly to the company?
The grant monies, as we understand it, and again, we've not seen the agreement, but as it's structured, the grant monies will flow through the city and PPIC and then out to the developer. Very similar to the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund that was awarded for the Preferred Freezer project, a very similar format. Again, serving as a pass-through for those funds.
When do you expect that you have the agreement fully executed?
We're expecting a May timeframe for that.
Okay. Thanks, because I was thinking about the year-end audit.
Yes. And we will certainly forward the information to you so you can begin to plan for that as well.
Do we expect that this will be an annual thing, this Commonwealth Opportunity Fund?
Well, that's a great question. It leads into our next update. It is an annual program. It's a recurring program. They've funded it, I believe, in the governor's budget to the tune of $1 million, again, for FY21, which is the current round that opened on January 1. So we do have an application that will be going live and available again here locally, as locally we really administer this program. February 27th, so that is this Thursday. We will make that live and available on our website with a deadline of March 27th for any local projects to be submitted for the PPIC's consideration, which we would expect to bring to you in April for your approval. The state deadline is May 15th, so we're fast approaching that date. We've had a few projects that have expressed interest, and we'll be looking to submit applications, I'm sure.
And those applications are going to you?
They come to the Economic Development Office. We review those, vet those, make sure they're complete upon submission, and then ultimately they come before the PPIC as they did in the last round for your review and
So
consideration.
this commission will actually make the vote on which project we want to submit?
That's correct. And what the program requires is that you determine what the highest priority project is for the city for that fiscal year.
Okay.
So ABC Corporation can't just apply directly for this money. It has to be blessed through PPIC.
That's correct.
I like that.
Yeah. Anything else?
That's it on that item.
Okay, Southgate. I've been promising for months to have Doug here. He finally got permission to come. And he's going to give us an update of where we are. And he's going to tell us everything he can tell us, but there's a lot of things he can't tell us because it's...
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. If it's okay, if I can just stand right here, if everybody can hear me. If I talk low, I'm low. Sometimes I'm a low talker, but if I talk low, just ask me to raise up on there. So, Ron, council members, and commissioners, and distinguished guests here. My name is Doug Taylor. I have a real long title. It's a Community Plans and Liaison Officer. It's a long title for a real estate guy, although I don't know anything about real estate. My job at the shipyard is to work with the local community and work with the Navy on compatible and incompatible land uses. That's what I'm really focused on, is how we can work together to not impact each other's mission. Obviously, our mission is fix any ship, anytime, anywhere. City's mission is pretty clear from your website on there. I do enjoy working with the staffs in the city of Portsmouth, and I'm usually in Bob Baldwin's office a lot, or James Wright's office, and I just found out Joseph Khalil retired on there. So we thank you for supporting us, and your folks are just doing a fantastic job on the things that to help us get through things. So
You also wear a Navy Region Mid-Atlantic hat, is that right?
yeah, I'm also with the Navy Facilities Engineering Command. Operationally, I report to the shipyard CO. Administratively, I report up through the Navy's Facility Engineering Command, and this is Commander Naval Installations Command. So I get everybody taking a shot at me every day, and you'll never be amazed at things that come across my desk that I get to work in. The latest thing is coyotes now. So back up about a year. I'm also a retired Navy captain, Civil Engineer Corps captain on there, and enjoying that retirement as well. Soon to enjoy another retirement. Back about a year, I think it was, Ron, at...
Last February, yes.
Yeah, we sat right here with Admiral Rock. And Captain Torkels and I, he's the installation CO, we sat in the back and we were talking about this opportunity. The challenge was, and this is supported by Big Navy, you'll hear me say Big Navy, I'm talking about Department of the Navy, is take a look at any opportunities, any areas where we have underutilized land or even excess land. You know, we've got some excess land across the river at St. Helena. We're in the process of disposing of that. And then take a look at any excess or underutilized land that you have at the installation level that might serve the community well on there. So Ron approached me and said, "Hey, would you guys be willing?" And I think PPIC, I think you invited Admiral Rock here from a previous conversation you had. Yes. Is that right, Ron? And then they say, "Hey, let's take a look at this." Subsequently, we invited the folk leadership from PPIC and Mayor Rowe. And I don't know if you were at that meeting with us.
Bill was there.
Yeah, yes, sir. And over to the shipyard, and we sat down and chat about it. I did a presentation, said there's an opportunity that we see out at our Southgate property. Just to give you a little lay of the land, everybody knows the Jordan Bridge is here. And then this is the PER site, Jim Salmon's site. I was really happy to be involved with that process and working with his team and his attorneys on that to drive that to success. We did not stand in the way of that. We supported that, and they addressed all of our concerns, and they're moving forward nicely on there. Jordan Bridge, and then you coming back down here, you see one of our entrances into the shipyard here. This is what we call our Southgate Annex. This whole here, piers A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then we have some little finger piers right there. From our conversations, we were able to determine that the maximum upland piece that we could get in addition to the waterfront piece would be attractive And so we looked at 3 proposals, and they all just, 3 parcel sizes that I created that were just increasing in the upland piece of that. So we settled on this parcel here that will come up here and split this. Essentially, it will jog here, come down through here, and essentially over here, back here, and capture all of this wet slip as well in that wharf area as well. We're going to keep our floating piers and our access to our boat ramp. We have some ready service lockers for small arms and small ammunition that we store out here. They're actually in this area right in here. Oh, I'm sorry, back up. They're right in here. There. So we were looking at that piece right there. It's a pretty good size piece. The waterfront piece, because we go out to what would be a boundary consideration for the Navy, is about 13 acres, which is essentially the waterfront to here. And the upland piece is a little scant over 16 acres. So it's a total of just under 30 acres that we're considering. Pretty good sized chunk of land out there. Okay. This whole process that we're following is called an enhanced use lease process. And it's basically where the Navy's going to retain the land. We're not accessing it. We've determined it underutilized. Even though someone's look out there and say, well, look, you got a lot of stuff going on out there. We made that determination because there's no funded mission out at that site. For some of this stuff, there is funded mission for some stuff, but we felt confident that we could make that available for consideration under this enhanced use lease program. So the Navy will retain the land, but we're willing to lease it out essentially. Now the other caveat, remember, Ron, Admiral Rock was saying we do not want to receive a check.
That's correct.
So if we get cash or a check,
kind.
guess where it goes?
Treasury.
Point the compass north, and we never see it. So we're talking about, let's pursue in-kind services. And in-kind services could, the sky is the limit on what we could receive, anywhere from parking solutions to new piers to maintenance and repair of new piers, a whole gamut of things on there. And what will drive a lot of those is the appraised value of that opportunity. The other challenge that was given to us was we would like that to be at least a 50-year option. And that's what we're focused on, is a 50-year option, so that it becomes more attractive for the investment that you may see from some folks on there. Now, this enhanced use lease process is actually got 3 parts to it, 3 phases. We're right now in phase 1, which is a project identification piece of that. Then there's phase 2, it's a project selection and negotiation, and then phase 3 will be project management and administration. And from our meeting that we had in March, we said be prepared for a very long deliberative process, and this is a very long deliberative process on there. This is the first one I've ever done on there, and it's one of the, I think it's 14 or 15 that the region has considered, but most of those have dropped off because of a number of reasons. They either had an environmental issue, or the market was too thin, or the selected vendor had to pull back because of a cash flow issue, various reasons, but that they dropped out. And one has been is going to success, and it's a small utility up in, I think, Earl, New Jersey. I think this is not a very big one in there. So we're in phase 1, and where we are in phase 1, and each one of these phases have a lot of items on there. We don't even want to, I'm not going to go into those because they're mind-numbing on there. But right now where we are in phase 1 is we have parked a lot of business documents and a lot of required documents in our real estate system to engage our real estate contracting officer and our real estate organization on there. So a lot of business sensitive information is already parked out there. Many more that have to go. Right now we're focused in determining the environmental condition of the property that is required under the NEPA process that we have to do. So we know we've had some environmental issues out there. Now we're going to define what those are, and we'll have to do some testing. There'll be soil sampling. There'll also be some sampling out into the bottom in the piers is there as well. That process is going to take, based on the records research that we've done and the constraints analysis that we've done in the portfolio that I've seen, we are going to have to do a lot of testing and sampling out of there. And that's going to take anywhere from 12 to 8 months. And we're working with our contracting office and to issue that to our consultant on there. We've also sent a fund request up to the region to ask for funds to cover the environmental studies and survey and the administrative support. So that's all we're in the millwork right now. We haven't received any confirmation back on the funding yet because that letter just went out just recently. And once we get that funding, we match up, we have the government estimate, we have the scope of work, and we have a vendor under a task order that we can issue that task order, and off the races we go. And then we'll kind of watch it. That's the part where the paint's got to dry. So it's not a whole lot that's going to happen that's reportable other than the status of where we are with that environmental condition of property. And then from that, whatever those recommendations are. Some of those recommendations could be part of in-kind services. It might be to do some environmental cleanup as part of the in-kind services. So we'll find that out. But we have to make that determination so that we can take the next steps on it. Now, while all that's happening, there's some other phase 1 stuff that I'm working on right now. That's relinquishment of jurisdiction. There's some letters that we need to send to the Department of Justice and also to the city about assuming that coverage of police support under public safety on there. We'll still be part of that, but primarily we're saying, hey, it's not Navy that's using it now, it's the community on there. Now, we're also in phase 1, we will select a consultant to help us guide through the phase 2 and the phase 3, and that's putting this opportunity together and advertising and then creating that dynamic of the competition, because we have to compete this opportunity so that the Navy's receiving the best value they can get. And then in the phase 2, there'll be a business plan development to select the successful bidder, the successful organization and developer, and work the particulars of the agreement at that point on there. So we're still a bit out on there. And what I'm trying to do is as much concurrent activity as I can during this environmental condition of property determination. And that's pretty much where we are.
Bill, you have a question?
Yes, knowing that this is a long process, how could command changes throw a wrench or get this thing off track?
It's always a possibility on there, sir, but right now this has got Admiral Rock's attention, and this is something that's consistent messaging that we're seeing from the Department of the Navy and the Secretary of the Navy and DoD wide is, hey guys, the message that we've received is there's no more money. So if you've got all this land out here, there's no more money to take care of a lot of that stuff. And right now we're basically caretaker status. If something breaks out there, we stand back and really look at what's the impact of the mission if it stays broken.
So this has the support of the Navy?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's a nice part about my job is I'm a continuity person. And my relief will be the continuity person. So once we set this in motion, unless otherwise directed, we're moving out. As Admiral Rock told me, Doug, run right out here in this lobby. Doug, run with sharp scissors. And he says, if you need another set, I've got a pair for you. Aye, sir. About facing out the door I went, and that's where we're at. I'm moving full steam ahead. Our real estate folks are seeing some of these position documents that they need to take and run for action on there. So we're moving full steam ahead on this, sir.
Very good.
I'm in constant contact with my counterpart of Oceana because they've got an interesting initiative.
Well, the good thing is that Oceana, our effort has resulted in Oceana looking to do some of the same enhanced lease options for the offshore wind project of getting, landing, all that space that they can't put buildings in, they could put, where the windmill, I'm sorry, I keep calling it windmills, the offshore generators, land their, transformer bank, and they're talking about this, multi-gigawatt, transforming station out there, and their in-kind services would be, they get paid in electricity for use of the land. And something that, when I met with the mayor, he asked, well, is there anything we can do during this process, since it's a drawn-out process of in-kind services, that we ought to be good neighbors to you now. And we really haven't discussed, in-kind services yet, but it's one of those things that we need to discuss sometime. And that was one of the mayor's inputs when we met to talk this about him. And what do we need to do next, and what are we thinking about? And you mentioned parking and whatever, because some of this stuff, I mean, this area could be interimly used, by someone, in the meantime. So it's one of the things that, I know it's 8 to 12 months, for the environmental survey and get it done, and then there's the mitigation afterwards, which could take days, years, or it could be a showstopper.
And we won't know until we get those results and those final reports out from there. But and again, those could be wrapped up into the part of the request for quotation or RFQ or RFP to say, hey, the Navy is, here's what we're looking at. All those particulars in there. There's a lot of stuff I obviously can't share in this form on there. At some point, all the Navy folks will be signing non-disclosure statements because now we'll step into a procurement. And that's kind of an interesting challenge that PPIC creates for us. And it's a good challenge. Don't get me wrong. It's just a challenge. PPIC was created, as you're aware, of 1954 General Assembly. It says, hey, do this down in Portsmouth. And it has given PPIC certain authorities. And the certain authorities, you're a government agency, we recognize that clearly. So I work with two sets of attorneys on the region side and on the contracted procurement side. We clearly recognize them with all due respect of the government agency that PPIC represents from the 54 Charter on there. But it gives you authorities to enter into land agreements and purchases and sales and that sort of stuff in arrangements. Now on the procurement side, that looks like a potential bidder, as if there was I heard you use A, B, and C company, A, B, and C times 5. There's potential bidders, so that makes you a potential bidder, which causes a concern on the procurement side that be careful, there's only so much we can share. That's why I'm keeping it at a process level. So there's two challenges with that I'm working with on there, and they're all good challenges, and none of those are showstoppers. It's just at some point there's some things I just can't talk about because they're business sensitive.
And so for actions on the city's part, is there, other than sitting patiently, what should we be doing?
Sit patiently. Because the risk the city would have is if we get at some point, at somewhere during this long process, that's something that could dictate a showstopper. And we don't know that. Right now, I'm not seeing anything. Leadership is engaged. They fully support this. Region engineer staff is engaged. They fully support this. Captain Torkelson supports that on there, and this is a good part of our partnering. It continues with the partnering that we do with the city on there. I'm excited about it. My turnover file is got a picture of a set of sharp scissors and a phone number to get another set if you need them. But we're going forward on this.
And when are you leaving?
I'm looking at retiring 2 years from now, maybe a year from now.
Okay, because we just don't want to lose any momentum that you've created.
Well, you'll need to finish this before you retire.
I've heard that before.
That was my point.
Taylor, you don't got to do it now, but before you go home tonight, can you? Yes, sir. Aye, sir. Got it. Ever ready for your signature first thing in the morning? He says, well, I was thinking like 7 o'clock tonight. I'm still here. And it's on there, so. But we're really excited about it. This is and it's my first one I've done on there, and it kind of comes in with a lining in the stuff that we're doing with the joint land use, and maybe we'll identify some more in there that we can pursue on this.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just curious
Questions for anybody. Yeah.
On the fair market value, when is that determination made? What fair market value?
We'll do that in phase 2 or phase 1.
Phase one.
Phase 1. We have to do the boundary survey and the appraisal. There's a whole bunch of, when you look at these line items, there's a whole other, the schedule of things that have to happen underneath those. I've covered this covers the wave tops. It's 110 items, and each one of those have some other activities under them, but we'll do that under phase 1.
And when you do that, do you run with that as the fair market value for the duration of getting the project started, or do you have to update that?
No, as far as I understand, it's just the update. I mean, when you
establish.
Exactly. Because the concept is entering into a 50-year agreement. And then-
50 years or greater agreement.
Yep. And my sense is there'd probably be a renewal option in there at some point in time on that.
And now, you and I talked about updates, that you might want to be coming back quarterly to the PPIC to brief us and just give us a status.
Yeah, that would be, I think that would probably be appropriate on there. And then if it looks like, when the quarterly meeting is coming up, if there's not a lot to update, because we're caught in, not caught, but we're in that environmental condition of property determination. I don't know if you want me to update how many soil samples they took or anything like that. I think maybe I can look at, what I'll do is I'll look at that schedule when we get it from the consultant and see what their milestones are. And maybe that's what will help us guide the updates on that. But all these other things are administrative items that are just all concurrent activities.
Well, it's one of the things that Admiral Rock asked when he came here a little over a year ago, was that, he'd come back in about a year. And I just, and we're going to thank him for, all his efforts, but, if there's any shortcomings, we need to just, bring it up to him, so. Any other comments from anybody here? Hey, thank you very much, Doug.
You're right. Thank you.
Is there any other old business that we ought to be covering on the floor here?
Going on to new business.
Okay, going on to new business. Mr. Moore, almost.
So we're not going to move very far from the last update. We're actually just going to go across the street here. And this is a project update. We've added this item to the agenda, so it'll be a standing item that you'll see moving forward, where we will continue just to provide you monthly updates on our activities. But for today, we wanted to give you an update on 3920 Burtons Point Road, which is a PPIC-owned property. If you recall, this property is part of the overall EPA Superfund project there adjacent to the Atlantic Wood site. And for a considerable amount of time, they've been moving a lot of dirt out there, doing a number of lifts to place soils on the property, which they have completed as of the start of this year. You'll see the photos on the right. They have just recently placed a stone cap on the property, so that is now the finished grade and elevation for the cap to the environmental remediation site. We expect that within a month, the project should be closed out. We've recently met with Randy Sturgeon of the EPA, who has come in and briefed you all previously at your meetings. We just met with Randy 2 weeks ago, myself and Jeff Miller, to talk about the process of moving forward with the closeout for the process, and then working to have the site utilized and redeveloped. So we're very close. We're excited about it. It's close to 5 acres, and we do have some interest in the property, so hopefully in the very near future we'll be able to discuss that further. But just want to let you know today that it is close to being complete.
Is the assessed value that we showed in the financial statement, is that what the current value is? Remediated?
I believe the current assessment, if I recall, is $411,000, and that is based on the land area for the property.
Remediated?
I believe that is the case. I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. Butt, who happens to be in the room today, but Billy, I don't know if you want to provide input to that.
That, I haven't gotten confirmation that site has been completely remediated at this point, but as soon as it will, I will look at the assessment and determine what it should be.
A waiting period before that property can be actually developed?
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a particular period. It will forever be part of, there will be maintenance obligations that will be of record. And, we were talking to Randy Sturgeon. Eventually, EPA will have some control for 6 months or a year, and then DEQ will have the overall control, making sure that maintenance is complied with. But as far as the property being developable and usable, as soon as EPA is finished with the cleanup, you can pretty much start rolling with it.
And you're thinking that's like 8 to 12 months from now?
Well, I mean, I think they'll be fairly complete with the cleanup within a few months, and then I would think we'd see development within a year. Possibly sooner.
Okay, any other questions or comments on Burtons Point? Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. The next item is the joint retreat with the EDA. So the PPIC and EDA are scheduled for Thursday, March 19th to hold their annual joint retreat. We will be doing that, both bodies, this year. That's scheduled to take place at Tidewater Community College, I believe at 8 a.m. on the 19th of March. We look forward to having you all in attendance. We will be sending out additional information as the date approaches on where specifically that will be held at TCC and parking information and so forth. But I would encourage you, if you have not already done so, to submit any topics that you would like to have placed on the agenda for discussion. You can do those through staff. Please send those in, and we'll work to compile a list of items to include. I think we've gotten a few already, but we want to make sure that we're getting a full agenda with some good discussion points. So please get those in within the next week or so. Are there any questions on that item?
Because we really haven't talked about that. I mean, is there anything that we want to make sure that goes in?
I have to think about that.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to email those in again to staff, and we'll make sure that we go through and compile a good list. I think we've gotten a few suggestions from the EDA, as well as I think Mr. Peterman has sent a few in as well for PPIC, but we want to make sure we're getting a pretty good group of discussion points. So. The next item is your strategic plan committee, which at the last meeting, Chair Toops and Vice Chair Peterman were selected to participate in a strategic plan ad hoc committee along with our EDA representatives to review the economic development strategic plan. And again, this is really a departmental document that we've prepared that we utilize for planning our annual economic development strategy and focus for how we do economic development within the city. This year, we're seeking input from both bodies, so we will have those representatives in attendance on March 5th for a internal meeting to go through the plan and get your input and comments as we work to finalize that for the coming year, with that ultimately being presented and briefed before City Council on that item.
I think everybody had an email copy of this thing, to review. So since Jim and I are going to this thing, if you have any inputs, just send them in. And if you want to come, just volunteer. Okay, thank you.
All right. The last new business item that we've got, I believe you all have, at least a few of you do, the information for VITA, which is the Virginia Industrial Development Authority Institute, their annual training meeting. This may have gone out in your package when it was emailed out last week. This is available to board members. We encourage board members to participate and attend, especially those who are new to serving on a board, specifically an economic or industrial authority. This is being held on May 19th through the 20th in Roanoke. Certainly, again, for those new members on the commission, I would encourage you to attend. I believe Mr. Peterman has attended the prior VITA conference, and perhaps a few others who are on the commission currently. We do reimburse you for the fees associated with it, so you would need to go ahead and book for the conference and travel yourself, and then we would, through the budget that has been allocated, have the ability to reimburse you for that. So if you choose to do that, just inform us. You can reach out to Ms. Ogleby in our office and let her know, and we'll work with you to help get everything scheduled. So That was the last item I believe we had for new business.
You know, one of the things that we talked about at our last meeting was the letter. Could you just update us on the letter didn't happen that we talked about? You know, this is the one that Jim Toops was going to sign.
The resolution, Council? Okay.
There was some discussion at our last meeting about some development activity in the West Norfolk community and some utility improvements that were needed in the community to support private investment and development. There were some pieces of information that I believe were requested at that meeting for the project developer. We have not received those items yet. I believe there was some talk about putting together a letter of support of some sort for the project, and to date that has not occurred or moved forward for consideration by council, but certainly I will leave that open to discussion by the commission.
That was basically on the water and the priority of funding and whatever. Did anything happen at the offsite? Did that get focused on at all?
Mm.
So it sounds like we still need that letter. So I'll talk to Jim when he comes back and see what we can do.
Certainly, if we receive any updates between today and that next meeting, we'll work to brief the TPIC on the status of that. But as of right now, we're waiting for the specific project information that was requested of the developer.
Okay, any other new business? I asked Chris if he would speak basically what's happening in his world.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Council members, and also City leadership for this morning's opportunity to come before you and discuss some of the activity we've seen at the Port of Virginia. I will start off, calendar 2019 was really a great year at the Port. We had some really awesome milestones, especially right here in the City of Portsmouth. You know, we finished the project at Virginia National Gateway. We finished the expansion project. That is a complete expansion project. We have doubled our throughput capacity there at VIG, taking what was already really a gem, globally recognized, and made it even better. So truly excited that we have gotten to that point at VIG. We also had some great economic development announcements in Portsmouth. Preferred Freezer was an exciting opportunity, and it continues obviously to work through the process. And then seeing IRG make the investment and acquire that Cogentrix site and what they've already begun to do in tearing down the former facility and market a 300,000 square foot facility right next door to VIG. I think that is exciting to see and exciting to recruit new capital investment to the city, as well as create new jobs. Last month, the Port of Virginia had an exciting announcement. Our Board of Commissioners did, in fact, adopt a resolution to allow the Port to lease up to 40 acres to a global leader in the offshore wind development space, Ørsted Energy. And we were very fortunate to have the governor and the mayor there at our facility to make an announcement of the lease back in January. It's an exciting opportunity. The whole industry is an exciting opportunity for the entire U.S. East Coast. But Virginia, Hampton Roads Harbor, and obviously the city of Portsmouth have some real strategic advantages that no one else can mirror or duplicate. And so I think it's first of many neat opportunities to come. But the Port, we're extremely excited to leverage PMT, the Portsmouth Marine Terminal, for a new piece of cargo or freight. If you think, and look at it, the whole picture, we've added capacity at VIG, significant container capacity, and we're also adding capacity at NIT. And moving containers is really a core competency of the Port and really driving the Virginia economy, creating thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs throughout the state. But for us to then have Portsmouth Marine Terminal and be very strategic to align it with cargo and emerging industries like offshore wind, it really wouldn't have been possible without those expansion projects. So the sort of the aligning of the stars is happening, and there's obviously more that needs to happen when it comes to aligning of stars and certain legislation, or if it's BOEM and the authority that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management has, and providing final approval for some of these large commercial offshore wind projects to move forward along the U.S. East Coast, which is happening. So this is all positive momentum, and we're doing our part as stewards to really foster and develop a new industry for the Commonwealth. So we have actively been working a number of different offshore wind opportunities. We've been actively involved with obviously Portsmouth Economic Development. We've had the good fortune of always having a very open dialogue, and we're excited even looking here into April and some upcoming joint marketing efforts that the city, along with the port and the Departments of Mines, Mineral and Energy, DMME, and making some efforts to really get exposure, additional exposure. I think the industry knows, but we really want to get out there and let them know that we're serious about earning the business and bringing the potential of this new industry here to Portsmouth and to the Hampton Roads Harbor. So I really, 2020 is looking promising when it comes to offshore wind and opportunities around there. There's still some hurdles that we have to address and we will face, but I think we have a great team in place, and it has definitely risen when it comes to interest level and having everyone sort of aware of the opportunity and aligning thoughts and efforts, so we're all sort of rowing in the right direction. So that's the good news. And just, I will wrap my statement comments up on less than good news. And obviously we're tracking as a port, and I mentioned container it being one of our core pieces of business. The coronavirus is something as the port we are definitely very cognizant of, and obviously hate to see what's happening there in China and the impact it's having to those citizens. But obviously then the ripple effect that has in trade. Starting 2020, there was a new fuel introduced into the container shipping, really all commercial shipping. It's a low sulfur bunker fuel. So the carriers were doing blank sailings in the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, so in January. And what a blank sailing is a vessel, will come, let's say, from China every week. There'll be a ship from MSC will come, and they'll pull a ship out of service to scrub the bunker tank and to clean it up and put in, obviously, new low sulfur bunkers. So we kind of had that already as headwind to start the first quarter. And obviously with what's going on in China, we understand those headwinds will continue with additional blank sailings, with the ocean carriers not being able to actually load out vessels at the moment in China. So that will have some ripple effect. It's hard to really determine what that looks like, but as the carriers don't have vessels calling, it just sort of a trickle-down effect. So it's something we're very aware of, trying to work with our customers and the carriers to make sure that we're doing everything strategically to limit the impact and be very much responsive when the freight does come back on, which, just sort of rule of thumb, it's, 30-day voyage from China to the U.S. East Coast. So once China does open back up, figure that's sort of a 30-day ripple effect to when that freight will start flowing again. So those are my remarks for this morning, and but appreciate this opportunity.
Okay, Elizabeth, you raised your hand.
I just wanted to make a comment because, more for the public than for you all. Welcome Councilman Glover to the room, and explain why he's sitting over there and not over here, that even though this is a public meeting, no more than 2 members of the City Council can be together at any one time. And so, because Councilman Moody and I are the liaisons, we're here. It's a public meeting. We invited all of the council to come today because of Mr. Taylor's presentation. So Mr. Glover is on the sidelines, but we're glad to have him.
Bill, anything from you? Anyone else? I guess I don't see any reason for a closed meeting, is there?
We do not have any items for a closed meeting today.
Okay, then is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Vote on it?
Meeting already.
No?
Yep.
Okay,
Mr. Miller says no.
we're adjourned.